Hello, I'm Daniel Lane with SC320, and today we're going to be going over a proper site setup for a Bull 1250 EBS 480 volt and a SC320 shaver 480 volt from SC320. So in making sure everything's properly hooked up, both of these pieces of equipment are polarity sensitive. So in order to be safe, if the polarity gets reversed on the vacuum, it will blow instead of vacuum. So obviously that would make a big mess. So there is a side door that we want to open prior to our initial startup. So these two latches will undo, open that door. That compromises any socket vacuum or blowing the vacuum can do, basically saving you from creating a job site mess. Once we're ready, the door is open, we can then allow the motor to ramp off, and then check the back exhaust to make sure that that is blowing out. As long as this exhaust vent that's labeled is blowing and not sucking in, everything is hooked correctly, you can now shut the door and your vacuum is hooked up properly. Alright, now that we've got our vacuum properly set up electrically, now we can confirm the polarity on the shaver as well. So when the shaver is hooked up properly, once the emergency stop is pulled up and it can no longer go out any further, there is a green start button. When that is hit, it will stay lit, showing that the polarity is correctly hooked up. If this flashes and goes off, it means that you have reverse polarity and you're going to have to pull the machine from power and swap two of your legs to reverse the polarity. Once the polarity is correct, this green button will stay lit, and then we'll be good to proceed with other aspects of the machine and run. Next, we're going to talk about setting this up in a proper position. So this model, the SC320, is hooked up with a unique feature. It has a wheel that can be locked or disengaged to where it will swivel. So this little latch up here, when it is in the forward position, it pulls up and allows you to shift the machine left and right, which is good for transport. However, when you're running it, you only want it to go straight. So you can pull this little lever back, it'll in turn lock that wheel, it'll no longer allow you to shift it, and it'll only run straight and stay true to the tire. So next, with the shaver, we're going to talk about the adjustments. So most customers are going to be using this for several different occasions, whether it's an 1/8 inch cut or 16th inch to expose aggregate, or a whopping 1/2 inch, 3/4, or even a full inch depth cut for rebuilding joints. When you're doing these different cuts, the machine has to be set up different. So at the back, you'll notice a yellow wheel and a double black wheel. The yellow wheel is connected to a worm drive motor. This is what makes this machine self-propelled. So why that is important, there is a gap between the yellow and black wheel. If you're doing a deeper cut, that gap needs to be much bigger. When you're doing a shallower cut, the opposite is true. You want it to be pretty immediate contact. That way it's allowing your shaver drum to hit early. So let's talk about how to adjust that. At the back of the machine here, there's a little T-bolt. It's going to be a cylinder with two bolt heads going into it. So with this, there's a jam nut. So it's standard thread, so you'll take an adjustable wrench and clockwise that off, lefty-loosey, and that'll allow you to adjust it. So if you do a counterclockwise turn, that will let thread out and that will decrease the distance. Basically, if you're setting up for a shallower cut. If you do a clockwise turn, that pushes thread down, which lifts the wheel up. That would be if you're doing a bigger, deeper cut. So next we're going to talk about the other adjustment on this machine, and that's the leveling adjustment. So if this machine were to cut heavier on the right or left side, there is a simple fix for that. Either side of these wheels has 8mm bolts that hold the axle. So choose one side. Let's say for example, this left wheel from the driver's side position right here is cutting heavy and we want to raise that side up. We will loosen this with an 8mm Allen. Do not take it all the way out, just loosen it. And then with a ratchet, clockwise only, there is a 8mm bolt in the center of the wheel. You will turn that clockwise and that will lift or drop the machine until it's level. Once you have a level that you're happy with, and feel free to put a floor level in front of the machine for balancing, then you can tighten the back bolts back up and then proceed with operating the machine. Next thing we're going to go over with the shaver is setting the depth of the drum. So there are multiple depth adjustments with this machine. As we previously seen, this will be the primary height adjustment for the drum. So to activate the drum, we will make sure the spin handle at the back is rotated all the way up. Once we're ready to start adjustment, ideally when the machine is running, but for sound's sake, we're going to do it before, you drop the drum down at the back. This is the primary drum depth. Once this is lifted up, that drum is off the ground even if it's adjusted all the way at its maximum cut. So for transport, you would pull this up. So let's say we're running, we're ready to adjust our drum. We're going to set this handle back. That now shows that this is ready to be staged and put into the cut. We will do clockwise turns and you'll see the handle is moving down, signifying that it is going to start cutting into the concrete. Now once we've got the depth that we're happy with, we can lock this in. There is a back handle, a back plastic handle. You can turn clockwise until it's tight. Don't over tighten it until it's tight. It then deactivates the primary depth adjuster. So now when you're done shaving, you lift your drum up, you stop your machine, and when you're ready to start back up, you just drop the drum right back down very slowly. So let's talk about setting up the drive motors for the shaver real quick. So obviously this machine in correct polarity is going to want to pull forward, and we want it to go forward. So our speed dials here, so once our e-stop's up, everything's powered, we're going to turn to the green arrow direction. That means that this will move forward. So on the side of this, there's a on-off button, just like the green one up here that'll stay lit green. That is the power for the drive motors. And then what's called a potentiometer or a speed dial that goes 0 to 10. Moving this up will increase the wheel speed, and those little yellow wheels, we talked about adjusting the height earlier in the video, those will then start spinning. So you can confirm that your motors are running by increasing the speed on the potentiometer or speed dial, and then visibly checking, yes, my tires are turning, or no, they're not, and then diagnosing it from there. So now finally, we're going to run the machine. So when we're running, always remember to wear your safety tether, whether you wear it on your belt or your wrist. I actually prefer wearing it on my belt. That way this doesn't get in the way of the depth adjuster dial. It can get tied around on your wrist, so just be mindful of that. The safety switch just pulls out. This machine will not run with this pulled out. So make sure that's inserted. Once that's inserted, make sure your emergency stop is up. The green start button is on. Previously, as we said, our wheel motors are set to 0. That way they're just stationary. And now we're ready to start the machine. Once we have our wheel motor set, our green start light lit, we are now going to engage the machine. The machine, the way this has to start is it has a series of contactors called a soft start. This machine has a ramp up, which is indicated by a Y dial, that has to be activated for about 10 to 15 seconds. You'll hear it in the sound. And it has a delta switch represented by a triangle. So when we're ready to start it, we will go Y for 10 to 15 seconds. Once it's wrapped up, swap it to delta. Then we're ready to actually put this thing in the concrete and start cutting. guys, so now that we've started cutting, now we can kind of diagnose if we need to make any further adjustments. At this point, we can now measure the depth of our cut. That's important for a reason. We can make sure the right and left side are equal. So if we need to do the axle adjustment, we can. We can also make sure that this is the depth we're aiming for, and then make sure everything is dialed in. Once we're happy, this is now the chance where I lifted that drum up, have not changed anything. I can now lock that depth adjustment in, and it will continue this cut. Or if I want deeper, I can lower it deeper or raise it higher if I want less of a cut, and then lock it in appropriately once I'm happy. I always recommend just running a foot or two just to see what my current cut is, and then making sure I continue with what's happening. So that's kind of the recap on the shaver. Thank you for your time, and keep grinding.